Hello, it's me again, Brian with a Y, and it is the end of February. And so I'm just sort of, I guess, capping off the month, which was pretty eventful the last week. And well, I'm definitely going to just do the last few weeks of February and just take it from there and really just get a better idea of what since the state of the world is in and just talk about a little bit of politics. So, first thing I just really wanted to talk about is obviously uh, the winter blast that hit much of the United States. I believe two-thirds of the country, if not more, were affected, and so it really is something that is pretty astounding because it just I guess it further illustrates that climate change is real, or better yet, uh, that the extremes due to man-made climate change will greatly intensify uh, this century, if not, the subsequent decades that follow. And so, I think that's something that really has to be. I don't think it really needs to be really further investigated or determined because the effects of climate change are real. You see it now with the extreme winter conditions and droughts around the world, um, whether it's in Texas or you know in India with you know winter conditions being felt in Texas and drought conditions and above normal heat indexes in India. And so it's just one of those things where I think people have to come to grips and realize that if we don't get a grip or at least learn how to moderate climate change, which, is obviously more than just global warming, it's also cooling as well. And wetter than normal conditions. And obviously, you're just going to have more extremes of wetter conditions and dry conditions due to man made climate change. And so, even I believe I think it was the governor of Texas that said that it was the Green New Deal, which had caused some of the malfunctions in the power grid and natural gas supply for Texas, which which I guess has to be stated that one, the Green New Deal hasn't taken effect in the United States or really anywhere in the world, and also that Texas has a very unusual, or I guess a better way to put it is a more insulated grid system of for its energy supply, and so basically the grid within Texas is kind of its own operating system, which is kind of unique in the sense that it's not really shared with other states. And so one of the things that allows for Texas to do is basically make up their own rules or lack thereof rules in their own, utilities for power. And one unintended consequence of this was that obviously when the power went down, market forces took over supply and demand. Obviously, more people needed power, and there was a limited supply of that power, and so there was peak surging that occurred, and so there were quite a few number of individuals who got um, extremely high utility bills for this I guess this period of time, or however the cycle works for payment with Texas energy consumers, and so that's all some you know individuals pay sometimes thousands of dollars for only using what would amount to maybe only a couple of days of energy, and so you know, for all those who say that the market can take care of itself, well, during a blizzard or a natural disaster, that doesn't really apply. And so you're kind of seeing these effects of not only just climate change, but also COVID winter, where if people had a reoccurring payment or supplemental income from the government, that it would be possible for many of them to stay in their homes and not have to go anywhere, but also that some of these natural disasters would probably be alleviated if the federal government took greater action in moderating some of these conditions. And I almost half-heartedly predict that there will probably be more natural disasters that hit the southeast and even southwest of the United States. Just making it more vulnerable to some of these conditions. And obviously, winter conditions aren't unusual to the United States or North America in general, but for it to be, that extreme, especially that far flung of the country, especially, there were people in Austin who had power outages and things like that, and even just the sheer fact that certain segments of the city experience greater power outages than others kind of show kind of this classes divide in not just cities but also states as well, where people who are more affluent get power while others who may not be as affluent do not. And so the Green New Deal had nothing, just in short, the Green New Deal had nothing to do with the power outages or even just the weather in general because it hasn't taken effect yet. And so all those people who think that um, the Green New Deal is some kind of boogeyman or anything like that, it actually probably would have alleviated some of these problems because if you look at Texas and their grid, it is sort of insulated and things like that, but also it really only runs off of a certain number of energies. And so while preferably nuclear power is is by and large a cleaner renewable energy. It's not self. It's not fail safe, and it's not foolproof because obviously it's more expensive to build the infrastructure and things like that. And that's really what it comes down to is that the United States really has not invested in infrastructure for many of these parts of the world. I mean, many of the parts of the country, not the world, but just many parts of the country where some of these things are 100 years old. Just a case in point, in my hometown of Chicago, we have pipes that are over 100 years old. We have infrastructure that dates back to the 1880s, essentially when Chicago became, the second city. And so, that's something that probably has to be fixed. But Texas has intentionally set up their grid in such a way to avoid federal regulations and things like that because just there obviously are regional sources of power and things like that and management. For instance, the Metro Chicago area, which is like Southwest Michigan and things like that, and even into Indiana and Southeast Wisconsin, they pretty much share the same grid because they're pretty much geographically the same area and things like that. Texas obviously isn't geographically, it's vast, but it's not geographically the same from one end to the other or from one segment to the other. And so, and even you look at places like Tennessee that has the TVA, which is the Tennessee Valley Authority, and they kind of manage some of those things as well, and they distribute power to the region. And so you kind of see, people just not being prepared for a situation that really was preventable, I think. And, it just goes to show that, the lack of foresight by the federal government. And also just pure and simple, the United States did not invest in infrastructure. We don't have a 20-year plan to rebuild these crumbling systems or infrastructure in such a way that we really need to start rebuilding it. And it's not going to be, one administration that does it. It's going to have to be several administrations that does it over the long haul. Because, you look at all the great engineering works of even the early modern period, they took like 40 years to build. You look at even just medieval things like Notre Dame Cathedral. You look at some of the great universities in the old world and Near East and things like that. And these things took centuries to build, and it took, I mean, they took decades to build and centuries to maintain. And so the U.S. has really let these things fall into disrepair. And I really hope that the current Congress, along with the current administration, will put forth a robust infrastructure package that can kind of remedy some of these situations. Because obviously, all of the country wasn't affected in the same ways. And so we really have to get a handle on those things, and hopefully it comes to pass. I don't think in the near future that many of these things probably will happen, but over the long haul, hopefully they will happen because, there was a time when the U.S. did not have a interstate highway system, and now we do. And so it's up to us to maintain the things that we do have and build upon those great systems and infrastructure that we do have in place so that we can keep this thing kind of going because we don't necessarily need more clean energy, we just need more energy, period. And I think that a lot of the resources that we use right now are sort of inefficient, and we have to build up the infrastructure in such a better way to not just use renewables, but maybe some fossil fuels, maybe some nuclear energy and things like that to better off help the um, the economy, and also keep people from freezing in the wintertime as well. So just something to think about.